The Black Ship Side Story. What's the job? Chapter 2. Having just landed, Nico and his crew wasted no time disembarking and making their way straight to the target. The transport carrying Nico, Ida, and Cart sped through the forest as fast as they dared, while Myra and her drones ran overwatch in the sky above. The captain nervously checked the time, knowing full well their window of easy opportunity was quickly closing. We'll only have a few minutes to keep this simple. Ada, you take over driving and stay with the vehicle. Cart, you're with me, but keep your helmet on. These people aren't used to seeing your kind, and you don't have a tail. Ada promptly stuck her tongue out but nodded. Meanwhile, a round of eye captains was heard as they pulled up to the smallish but comfortable-looking cabin in the woods. Showtime, people. Let's make it look good, Nico said as his final words before stepping out and quickly marching up to the front door. Shattering the peaceful calm that resided in the staple home, a loud, insistent knock came from the door as Nico pounded away a few times. Ju and Winona awoke with a start at the sound. What in the world? Said Ward as he rubbed his eyes. Another heavy-handed knock on the door had Winona reaching over and turning on a light. Who could possibly be here at this time of night? Outside, Nico tilted his head toward Karduk. Go around back. Make sure we don't have a household of runners. Yes, Captain, he said before quickly disappearing around the back. As he did, Nico pounded on the front door once more. Ada, step out of the vehicle, but keep your tail hidden. I want them to see multiple people if they come to the front door. A quick confirmation later, as he was about to hammer on the door again, an interior light turned on. The captain took a couple of steps back and moved off to the side slightly as he waited for them to answer the door. Inside, both Vam and Wessel had also been roused from their slumber. Weskel even grabbed his hunting rifle out of an overabundance of caution. Mom, Dad, what's going on? Vam asked quietly, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as W was finishing putting on some clothes to be the least bit respectable when answering the door. Yeah, who's here? Weskel asked, reinforcing his brother's concern. You put that rifle away this instant, Weskel, Winona chastised. If someone was trying to hurt us, do you really think they'd knock? Everybody stay calm, Ward insisted as he approached the door. Nothing is wrong. Winona noted that even as he said the words, her husband took a deep breath and opened the door, peering outside. Yes. Nico bowed his head in respect, formally presenting himself. Good evening. Is this the Staple residence? Home of Baron Wyatt Staples, as well as Nico paused, looking at a datapad to give the illusion of being official. Wart, Winona, Weskel, and Wham Staples? He asked in as professional a sounding voice as he could muster. Yes, you're at the right place, Wart confirmed hesitantly. Nico nodded urgently. I am Agent Richard Tracy, in His Majesty the Prince's service. We have word that you and your family are the target of traitor forces looking to capture you for use as blackmail as part of their war effort. I'm going to need each of you to quickly grab some spare clothes and come with us immediately as we relocate you to a safe location. Wart froze where he stood when his brain processed the words delivered to him. He didn't react for several seconds until a gentle, warm hand touched his shoulder and he snapped out of his stunned trance. He turned to see his beloved wife Winona as she positioned herself next to him. Has something happened to my Wyatt? She asked, her voice heavy with worry and dread. Nico was momentarily caught off guard, but immediately recovered. No, ma'am. To the best of my knowledge, Lord Staples is well, but I'm afraid you and the rest of your family are not safe. We need you to move quickly, please. We have already determined that at least 2 groups are hunting you as we speak. There is no time to waste. You must hurry. I urge you. Nico's voice remained calm but urgent. Winona and Wart shared a quick glance before nodding in agreement. Right away, Lord. We'll only be a couple of minutes. Nico nodded before stealing a look at his wrist chrono, knowing the clock was very much against them. As the door closed, Weskel and Vam looked to their parents for instruction. All right, boys. Go get some clothes together right away. We are leaving, Winona said, with a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. Is that man really a royal agent? Wam asked in an excited if hushed tone. I thought agents were supposed to be secretive, Westgall voiced dubiously. He just acted more like the constable. Yeah, but that's what movies make you think. No, that agents are always secretive, unless maybe he's pretending to be an agent, but really is the bad guy. Wham theorized as his eyes went wide while the plot thickened in his mind. Weskel wanted to dismiss the delusional thoughts of his little brother, but he wasn't sure what was going on, what was real, what was fake, who was friend, and who was foe. Boys, Wart finally cut them off. Pay attention. Now's not the time to daydream. Every other noble has sent letters to flatter us. Wyatt told us House Astor might command us someday. And here is an agent from that house. Not House Oranti, not Gmor or any other. We don't know what could have happened since that last call to change things. So please just go get your clothes now. We need to hurry. Despite looking a bit dejected, Weskel and Wham nodded and did as they were told. Moving swiftly, Winona and W ran to their rooms as well, though W began moving just a little bit slower. Something gnawed at the back of his mind and soon moved him to peek out the window. With a worried glance, he saw the apparent agent and his partner. His mind was jumbled. Everything was happening too fast for his liking. But as he was about to get back to the task at hand, something caught his eye. From this new vantage point, his eyes caught sight of something he had never seen before. The agent's partner had a tail. "Winona," he whispered as loud as he dared, his voice crackling slightly as he gestured to his wife to come close. "Come here quickly. Look." His wife did so and peered out the window to see Ada no longer obstructed by the vehicle from this angle. Her eyes widened as she gasped. "What is that?" "I don't know. Maybe some weird augmentation or an alien?" He bit his lower lip before continuing. "I think Wham might be right," Wart said as the color drained from his face. "Maybe this is the danger Wyatt warned us about." "Then what should we do?" Winona asked, the worry in her voice growing with every passing second. "Let's quietly run out the back. If we can lose them in the forest, we should be able to make it to town and get help. We're still in neutral space here," he suggested. She nodded, and together they hurriedly gathered a few essentials before returning to the boys in the living room. Moving as quietly as they could, Wart and Winona whispered the new plan to their sons. Both Weskel and Wham looked at each other with wide eyes before looking almost excited. Weskel disappeared for just a moment, hastily returning with his hunting rifle once more. "Absolutely not," Winona scolded as loud as she dared. Weskel, however, couldn't believe the reaction. "Mom, please," he protested. "We might need it." "What am I saying?" "We will need it." W stared at his son and then at the rifle. His wife couldn't believe he wasn't instantly joining her demand for their son to leave the weapon. Tell him," she demanded. W stared at his son, then the weapon, then his wife, then back to the weapon. Much to the surprise of all, he reached out and grabbed the rifle, holding it a little haphazardly as he looked to his wife. "Weskel is right, dear. It could come in handy. Come, we need to leave now." Winona stared at her peaceful husband in disbelief, but in the end, she accepted his decision and followed her family. As quietly as can be, Wart opened the back door to their house and peeked outside. His eyes scanned the area for anyone waiting in ambush, but he didn't see anything in the gloom of night. The man's heart was about to beat right out of his chest as he searched for the best way to escape. He knew they had a vehicle and could simply run them down. But if they could just make around a 100-meter run, the trees became too densely packed for a vehicle to follow. Then Weskel could guide them through the forest to the town. If they made it, at least that was the plan. Summoning the courage to move, he opened the door and led the way. Card had positioned himself behind a thick tree and some shrubbery, using his rifle to poke a hole through for him to keep an eye on the back of the Staples home. When the family emerged, Cart blinked in disbelief. That almost never happened. Nico's lies usually worked like gravity. "Nico, they're running, moving to intercept," he called through their comms channel. Nico was momentarily startled by the sudden declaration. He snapped his attention to his feline compatriot and barked. "Get in the transport. Sweep around back and cut them off." He did not wait for any response before kicking the front door in and charging forward, rifle at the ready. The man moved as quickly as he dared, but held back from a full sprint lest he get caught in a trap. "You try to be nice and respectful to people," the man grumbled sarcastically to himself, as his gun darted from one direction to the next. "And this is how they treat you." Outside, Wart took the lead while Weskel brought up the rear as they made their mad dash for the cover of the forest. Cart moved out from behind his cover to cut off their escape. "Drop the weapon. And get on the ground," he yelled loudly at Wart, expecting the others to capitulate instantly. The order was so unexpected, however, that Wart flinched when the angry commanding words reached his ears. His fingers squeezed around the weapon, accidentally sending a round streaking through the air directly into Cart's shoulder. Cart was completely stunned by the strike, wincing as the round slammed into his shields with enough force to throw him off balance. With a knee-jerk reaction, the mercenary also fired in kind, though his aim was no longer true to what he'd been aiming at. Moments later, a blood-curdling scream split the night in a way no rifle could. One of the staples had just collapsed to the ground. First, it was a tugging of the hand that quickly turned into a yanking of her arm as her baby stumbled. "Vam?" Winona questioned, her voice cracking with fear when her eyes could actually make sense of what had befallen her child. "Vam!" she cried desperately. "What?" Winona begged, immediately moved to cradle her youngest son, who began to openly weep. Word had flinched when the counterhot rang out, frozen in place as he didn't know what to do. His commoner upbringing screamed at him to obey and beg for mercy for accidentally opening fire, while his instincts told him they needed to keep running. The sound of his youngest's name being screamed in desperation pulled him back to what was happening behind him. "No," he whispered as he looked on in horror before dropping the gun and running to his boy's side. "No, wham!" Weskel stared wide-eyed in disbelief at the sight of his brother's mangled shoulder. He was frozen in place, uncertain what to do as he watched fresh blood spilling down Wham's clothes as his parents tried to stem the flow. Cart was jogging toward them when Wessel noticed his approach. A fire began to burn in his chest as his eyes drifted toward the rifle in the dirt. He looked back at Cart with a rage no amount of water could ever hope to put out. Without warning, he broke out in a run for his hunting rifle. W only just noticed what his oldest was doing just before he passed. He instantly threw out an arm to grab his arm, his leg, anything to stop him. "No, no, 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 Wessel, don't!" he shouted desperately. Weskel tripped as Wart managed to snag his leg with a whistle-like grip, but not before he reached out to grab the rifle, stretching as far as he could push his body to go, despite the pleadings of his father. Before he could bring the weapon to bear, however, Cart's right foot came slamming down on the weapon while his armored left knee crashed into Weskel's face. The boy was sent tumbling to the ground as Weskel saw stars from the strike. It was at this point Nico smashed the back door open as he charged outside to help Cart. His eyes widened in shock as he took in the sight of the entire Staples family on the ground with multiple injuries. His mouth dropped as he watched Winona still trying to stop the bleeding from Wham's shoulder, while Wirt was penitently throwing his body over Weskel to protect him from further reprisal from Karduk, begging repeatedly for mercy. Nico turned to Karduk, fury flashing in his eyes. He wanted to yell and ask what happened, but now wasn't the time. As Ada was swinging the transport around, clenching his jaws, Nico finally spoke. "Get them in the transport now!" He barked as he came to Winona's side. "Winona," he started in a surprisingly caring tone, to which she looked at him with streams of tears pouring down her distressed face. He looked Wham over for a moment, attempting to see the severity of the damage. He sighed before turning back to the boy's mother. "Help me get him in the transport, and we can patch him up," he said, gesturing to Karduk and himself. "I also have a full medical wing on my ship. He did this to my boy. I don't want him touching Wham," she growled angrily. "Mom," Wham said in between his weakening sobs and gasps for air. I don't feel so good. I feel cold." Nico reached down and gently laid a hand on her shoulder in an attempt to comfort her as Wham continued to cry. "Your boy has lost a lot of blood. If you want to save him, you will listen to me now," the captain said more firmly, yet as compassionately as he could. "Help me get him in the transport and let us get to work saving him." Her gaze shifted around between Wham, the transport, Karduk, Nico, and back to Vam before she wordlessly nodded her head and attempted to get on her feet while Cart and Ada were hauling Ward and Westcall into the vehicle. Not wanting to take any more chances, Cart and Ada cuffed Ward and Westcall's feet and hands before securing them to the transport itself. Meanwhile, Winona and Nico gingerly brought in Wham and laid him on the floor. "Ada, get us back to the ship yesterday," Nico ordered. "Aye, Captain," she replied quickly before running for the driver's seat. "Cardu, get this boy stabilized immediately." "Aye, Captain," came another quick response as Karduk grabbed the medical supplies in one of the overhead bins. "Winona, why don't you go sit with the rest of your family and buckle up? We'll need the space to work," Nico suggested softly. There was a long pause before Winona reluctantly nodded and did as she was told, finally relinquishing her grip on Vam's hand to let the strangers save his life. As the vehicle began to move back out onto the main path back toward the ship, another set of headlights appeared over the hill, barreling toward them fast. "Captain," Ada called out suspiciously. "I think we have someone following us. Notify our air cover," Nico said without averting his eyes from his task of helping Karduk. "And keep this thing as steady as you can," he said, while reaching for a bag of saline. "Hi, Captain," came the quick response before Ada contacted Myra. Meanwhile, the pursuing vehicle slowed as it reached the staple home. A small slew of curses escaped Mr. Warlow's mouth as he and the agent spotted the kicked-in front door hanging open. "You were right. Hurry, my lord. We have to catch them." Smith nodded quickly before stomping on the accelerator. "If you don't mind my asking, my lord, what's the plan once we catch up to them?" "If my old eyes aren't deceiving me, that looks like a heavy transport," Warlow added. "I've already contacted local security forces. They are on the way. We just need to stop them or slow them down long enough for the reinforcements to arrive." Mr. Warlow frowned as his mind worked through the possibilities. "You're going to have a hell of a time trying to slow them down in this. We need something heavier." "Well, this is all I've got at the moment, Sergeant. I don't usually carry heavy weapons. So unless you have a better idea, we go with this," he grumbled in frustration. His mission had twisted in a spectacular way in the span of mere minutes. I do actually have a better idea, that is. Turn left at this pathway coming up." The agent looked at the old man, confused. "Just do it, Blueblood," Mr. Warlow half shouted, desperate. "This better be good," Agent Smith warned as he slowed down and turned onto the dirt path that veered away. For his part, Mr. Warlow just smiled conspiratorially. High above, Myra flew slow and steady as she accepted Ada's transmission through her neural link. "Overwatch, how are things down there?" "We got the targets, but I think someone is following us a bit less than a kilometer behind us. Do you have eyes on them?" Ada asked, increasing her speed as much as she dared. Myra rolled her tiltrotor over to get a better view. "I think so. The tree cover is heavy. I'm not sure there will be much I can do to help until you hit more open ground. Unless you just want a little warning shot." "Do what you have to do," Ada replied, her voice flat. "We've got a casualty on board, so I don't have the luxury of getting to pull any fancy maneuvers." "Understood. Wait a minute. That vehicle just turned off and is going in a different direction." Mira watched for a few more seconds when the lights of the vehicle went out. A frown furrowed her brow for a moment before she finally finished her thought. Looks like it might be a false alarm." The vehicle shut down shortly after leaving the road. "Comm chatter is starting to pick up, though. Looks like someone might be onto us, so you better hurry either way." "I'm going as fast as I can, dear," Ada said in her usual sarcastically playful way. "Unless you'd like to come down here with the crying child and show me how it's done while I fly with the drones in the peaceful sky." There was a moment of silence before the response finally came in. "You're doing a great job down there. I just want you to know how much I admire and respect you from up here." Myra fired back with a smug grin, even as her mind wandered, worrying what had caused one of the children to be hurt. "That's what I thought." "Ada out," she said before cutting the link. The feline driver sighed as she glanced at the map that displayed their respective locations. "Only 4 more kill 'em. Maybe the next planet will be better," she muttered wishfully to herself. The forest around them soon began to thin as the dark silhouette of their Corvette just barely came into view. Finally, home sweet home, Ada mumbled happily to herself, a small grin forming on her face now that they were so close to completing their objective. "How's the boy?" she called out over her shoulder to Nico and Karduk, who were diligently doing everything they could to get him stabilized as fast as possible. Nico sighed, gently, holding him steady while Kart did the real work. "Almost done." "Just keep it steady as we Ada contact to your left," Myra shouted without warning. Ada winced as her sensitive feline ears were overloaded by the loud alert. She was about to ask what was happening when, without warning, a dark vehicle shot out from the tree eye. No headlights, no sound, cutting directly across Ada's path. The woman shrieked with surprise as she swerved to the left to avoid hitting the vehicle. Her eyes widened in shock, however, when a massive, angry bird running on 2 legs was now in her way instead. "Brace for impact," she cried a fraction of a second before smashing into the clicksaw. Disturbed and suddenly assaulted, other clicks reacted with angry cries as the night air filled with them. Did it work? Mr. Warlow asked nervously as he tried to see in the moonlight, which was the only illumination in the area. Looking through his night vision goggles, The agent stole a glance in the rearview mirror to see if the crazy plan managed anything other than a minor distraction. He soon huffed in surprise as he turned around to close the distance once more. Of all the damn fool things I've ever tried, yes. It looks like they hit one of those things hidden and veered off into a tree. Mr. Warlow nodded. Good, you pin them in place before they can back up. I will start clearing the rest of the cliques all, and then we can just hold our ground till your reinforcements arrive. Smith nodded as he shed his night vision goggles and turned the lights of his vehicle back on. Surprisingly, your plan is working so far, Sergeant. A commoner you may be, but one with wits. And with that, he stepped on the accelerator to carry out the last part as swiftly as he could manage before things started to unravel. More cliques soon joined the assault, however, with 2 attacking the transport and 2 more getting in between that vehicle and the one Mr. Warlow and the agent were in. Or not. Maybe we shouldn't have driven through quite so many nesting areas. Agent Smith groaned before being forced to turn away and deal with the birds first. Mr. Warlow nodded and shrugged his shoulders before rolling the window down and opening fire on their would-be assailants. Inside the transport, Nico and Karduk had barely enough time to grab hold of something while diving over Vam to shield him before the strike. In the end, the trio still ended up as a heap close to the front of the transport. Nico groaned as he took stock of their situation. Ada, why aren't we moving? In the driver's seat, Ada shook her head and let fly a slew of curses in her native tongue before switching back to their shared language. I just thought I'd stop for some coffee, Captain. She spat as she put the vehicle in reverse. Yeah, Nico replied sarcastically. I hope you got the receipt, he continued as the first impact from the cliques outside landed on the side of their transport. A large clawed foot suddenly breached a weak point in the armor, causing the metal to groan in protest. Yes, I got the receipt, and I got you a coffee as well, she growled, slamming on the accelerator to break away from the dead animal lying on them and keeping them pinned. You're the best, Karduk. Secure Wham. He barked as he moved to the small breach and prepared to shoot anything that attempted to get any further inside. In his mind, he reached out to Myra. Hey, where's my damn air cover? We're taking a beating down here. On the way, Captain. Myra answered in a calm tone as she organized her drones for the attack. Hammer dropping in 3, 2, 1, hammer down. On the ground, it looked like a meteor storm suddenly tearing across their patch of Volantis. Thousands of rounds rained down on the nearly couple of dozen cliques as the drones switched from one target to the next, being careful not to hit the transport itself. Meanwhile, Myra locked onto the vehicle that caused all the bother in the first place. While she wanted to drop one of her missiles on their heads and turn that vehicle with its occupants into a crater, the target was too close to friendlies and they were still trying to keep as low a profile as possible. At the last moment, she switched to her 30mm cannons and fired a long string of rounds. The vehicle jerked off course, skidding away from the line of bullets and tracer rounds that cut off their path. The agent, refusing to give up, took the vehicle amongst some trees to try and buy some time and cover, and he closed the distance in the attempt to still pin down Nico and his crew before they could break free and get away. Myra fired a few more bursts, trying to dissuade them from approaching further, but nothing seemed to work. Mr. Warlow and Agent Smith pressed on, determined to end this here and now. Not seeing anything else she could do, Mira dropped her tiltrotor craft down in between her captain and his attackers in a last-ditch effort to get them to stop, nearly crash-landing the craft for how low she had to come. The pilot growled as she fought to maintain her aircraft through the reckless maneuver. But once in place, she faced down the Aster agent and the auxilia sergeant who had come to a stop with a steely resolve. Indeed, each of them now glared at each other as they weighed their options and next moves. Breathing heavily, Mr. Warlow frowned when nothing immediately happened. She's not allowed to shoot us. Explain, Smith demanded for clarification. Look at her. She has orders not to inflict casualties or we'd be dead already. Warlow said, realization dawning on him as he looked to his counterpart. Agent Smith's eyes narrowed, shoring up his courage as he smashed the accelerator, sending them on a collision course straight for the aircraft on a hunch the pilot would blink first. Meanwhile, Mr. Warlow secured himself in the seat and prepared to fire if an opportunity presented itself. Myra's eyes widened in shock as the vehicle started careening toward her. Her finger laid just above the trigger as her mind raced to think of any other options. Her thoughts were shattered, however, when one of the few remaining cliques lunged at the back of her aircraft. Her tiltrotor veered to the side, unintentionally creating a gap that Smith instantly moved to take advantage of as he sped toward the opening. She gasped when she saw what he was doing. Gritting her teeth, she growled, "Oh no, you don't! You dirty bastard!" Ignoring the clicksaw for just a moment as she fought to maintain her aircraft and her directive not to cause collateral damage. She let her shields deal with the rampaging bird while bringing her guns to bear on the front of the agent's vehicle. The pilot took a breath as the whole world seemed to slow down around her while she strained every ounce of focus she had to its limit. Finally, her fingers squeezed the trigger, sending dozens of heavy rounds careening into the engine block. Much to her surprise, the vehicle suddenly veered off course before colliding with a tree with a violent crunch. The combination of the explosive rounds and the impact itself caused a small fire to erupt under the hood. Now able to deal with her bird problem, she shifted her focus to her attacker. Unable to truly get a good purchase on the aircraft, Myra was able to shed the animal and gain some distance before shooting the offending clixawall herself. She then surveyed the carnage for a few more seconds before reporting back with an annoyed "all clear, Captain," as Myra gave one final glance to the burning vehicle and its occupants inside. "Copy that, Overwatch," he said with a sigh of relief as he looked around to see how everyone was. "And not a moment too soon," he finished as the transport began to move once more. "No," she asked, departing from her usual formality. "I'm sorry. Are you okay? Is everyone safe? A little worse for wear? But I think we'll be all right. We do need to get Wham to the infirmary." "That crash did nothing good for his condition," he said, not yielding to sentiment. "Complete one more pass and then get back to the ship." "Aye, Captain," she said somberly before cutting the connection. Inside the slowly burning vehicle, Mr. Warlow woke up coughing from the smoke and fumes that were starting to fill the cab. He looked up to see the bullet-riddled front of the vehicle, the small fire blooming underneath, and the shattered windshield. His eyes lazily turned toward the driver's seat, where he saw Agent Smith slumped over the steering wheel with what looked like several pieces of shrapnel in his face, neck, and protruding from the synthetic body glove armor he wore under his clothes. A brief investigation revealed that what was left of the engine, which had been blown apart inside the cab, had all but vivisected him, killing the man nearly instantly. A string of coughs overwhelmed him as he clawed the door open and lightly fell out onto the grassy field. Only then, noticing the cuts and bits of metal that struck him from the same event. As he was wiping the blood from his brow, the distant roaring of ship engines captured his attention. The aged man looked heavenward to see the Corvette-class ship making for high orbit. "No!" He coughed again, watching helplessly as his friends were being ripped away from their home world and hauled off to the uncaring void. All he had left now was the smoke and the silence. "I've got a short author message for you. I'm glad you're all enjoying the story so much. As of Monday, What's the Job will be out on Mondays at the same time right here on YouTube. Chapter 7 and all subsequent chapters will be out on Monday and not Thursday going forward. This is to bring it in line with events in the current Black Ship story. Enjoy."